Well, IIASA, as you know, has been established as a product of the Cold War. And it was a Cold War which brought a number of great thinkers, great politicians together. Lyndon Johnson, United States, and Minister President Kosygin from Russia. It was founded in 1972 by 12 countries, and it played its role in the major transitions. I myself was surprised when I came here to see that almost every issue which is now on the agenda of discussion about environmental sustainability started at IIASA. First energy report, first climate discussion in connection to the energy, much before IPCC, and many of the thinkers and leaders in the current era of this field actually started at IIASA. Let me give you a short example of which role IIASA played in the first part of its existence, which was until the Berlin Wall went down. When Mr. Gorbachev got the perestroika system going in Moscow, he decided to send a couple of young and gifted Russian economists to IIASA, and he invited a number of leaders in the economic field from the United States, Harvard, MIT, others to come here too. And he asked them to sit together at IIASA and to think about methodological underpinning of the transitions which needs to be done in the former Eastern Bloc. As they came here to IIASA, they spent here some time together. They published a book which is called What to Do, and those who understand Russian would actually understand the joke, because What to Do is a translation of the title of a book by Mr. Lenin in 1918, Что сделать. And these Russian economists, they went back to Moscow. Some of them, 3 or 4 of them, became ministers in the government of Mr. Yeltsin and Mr. Gaidar. One of them, the best alumni in Russia, we have Peter Even, actually 3 times minister. And they used this IIASA experience, this IIASA book, for the major transitions in Soviet Union. And of course this sounds like a tale, but it's actually not a tale, because when I came here last year, my first month here was a month where we hosted a meeting which was called Economists in Transition 20 years later. And all these people who were here in 1992, the scientists, Nobel Prize winners economy, the Russian ministers, came together here, together with some of the heads of states of the former Eastern Bloc countries, to actually test the IIASA plausible predictions how to transfer the Eastern Bloc to the Western society, Western economy. It was exciting to see the IIASA predictions, the models, testimonials of the leaders of the former Eastern Bloc countries, some of them still in place, like President Václav Klaus. And then I realized that this place really was and is fundamental and could provide fundamental underpinning of the major global development transitions. Based on this type of study, we are doing now similar studies addressing, for example, Middle East, looking into the future of the Arctic, future of the tropics, and similar type of examples. So to me, IIASA is a place where this scientifically very well sound studies, based in the best science we have, but at the same time connected to the major development geopolitically, happen. And this is perhaps the unique place where this is possible.
How did the fall of the Berlin Wall affect IIASA?
Well, since IIASA was established to build a bridge, and to build a bridge to connect divided worlds, so to speak, by best science we have on both parts of the world, we could have said by 92 or 89 mission accomplished. And there were many who said so. And it was again the visionary of Austrian government which decided to call up a ministerial conference to Vienna. Close to 60 different countries came. And actually it was very quickly clear that there is a still need to have something like IIASA, even beyond the fall of the Berlin Wall. So the IIASA mission was established, re-established, broadened by this ministerial conference to become a global mission. A global mission meaning to be also building bridges between North and South and East and West. That's what we are now. We have 20 countries on our council. All the major economies of the new world, so to speak. All the BRIC countries, Brazil, India, South Africa, China. We are growing in Asia, and we are growing as we speak. And I think this role of global player trying to connect in many of the thinking underpinning sustainable development is a role which is still of key importance to many discussions internationally. The systems analysis as a concept has many explanations and many different ways to make clear what it is. To me, the system analysis means put together different elements of the Earth system. Earth system is having both biological, physical, and anthropogenic elements. And I'm a great believer in looking into the more and more better and better understanding of interactions between these elements. It could be just trying to combine the physical models with social economic models, right? In the real world, they are connected. And yet, if you look into the way how we organize our science around the world, our education is very much disciplinary oriented. I'm a great believer, and with me many at IIASA and before me at IIASA, that just the interconnections and feedbacks, as we call it, between the different disciplines actually could make a real progress in understanding. System analysis is also a very important field in the mathematics. System analysis is something where the basic theories of, for example, interactions between fractals, between different game theories, principles could be applied. System analysis, it could be also interpreted as a understanding of a strategic kind. You may know that system analysis was actually used by Rand Corporation before IIASA was established as an approach to military strategic issues, where again the interconnectivity between agents in the system was important. Now, of course, I could give these examples and be very, very theoretical, but let me give you 2 or 3 examples where the system thinking actually leads to a major improvement in understanding, but also in possibility to invest in the future development more effectively. One example comes from a very recent study which IIASA did, coordinated with many partners around the world, which was focused on the energy, called Global Energy Assessment, very comprehensive assessment of the future of energy systems within next 20, 30, 50 years, combination of sustainable classical resources with and without nuclear energy, all of that. And of course, when you get such a task to look into the energy futures, you tend to think in the energy terms. So it's about access to energy and cost and availability. You tend to forget that energy is a sector, scientifically, but thematically, politically, which of course is connected to other sectors. Energy is one of the major reasons, energy production, for the climate problem, because the emissions are coming from the sector energy. IIASA also has studied in the past all possible avenues by methodological conceptualization, modeling, how to mitigate the energy related emissions for the climate targets. Then you have other seemingly disconnected, but in the real world very much connected field, which is the air quality. They measure megacities around the world, from Beijing, from Shanghai, all the way down to Rotterdam or Amsterdam. There is a big air quality issue, which again is connected to the energy in many ways. Now, what we did at IIASA, we said, if we are asked to look into the energy futures, how much will it cost to actually have access to the energy of everybody? Let's have a look at the same time at the goals which we have to achieve in the mitigation of the emissions, climate, and let's also have a look at the same time at keeping with the standards of the air quality in the major world megacities. And we have developed models and tools to do these 3 things. And we did it, and we calculated all possible, as we call it, scenarios for the energy access and energy availability, but always with the constraint of keeping within maximum 2-degree warming, which means mitigating of the emissions, and within the concern of keeping the air quality around the world in the megacities within the standard. And to our surprise, the overall cost of this system view, the 3 sectors together, all the measures in the systemic view together, integrated view, was about 40% less compared to the situation we would be investing in energy only, in climate mitigation only, and in air quality only. If you think it through, it's not only scientific, interesting issue. It's issue of our daily, real world. In many countries around the world, and including my own country, Netherlands, and country of Austria, where I'm living now, we have 3 different ministries taking care of these things. The energy, with their own problem, with their own investment portfolio. The environment ministry, which usually is hosting the climate mitigation discussions, and air quality, and maybe one more ministry dealing with aspects of the economic development around those things. we will need to bring this together. So the systems thinking is not only to produce such a calculation, it's also to start discussion about governance, about institutional arrangements, about new playing field, which is less sectoral, which is much more cross-sectoral. And again, in IIASA, we have developed some tools to do it. We have developed and published in the major journals around the world, Science, Nature, game theories about coalition stability. I mean, coalition stability means how players could play together, what kind of incentives, sticks of carrots we could provide to make them to stay together. So again, methodologically, we are looking at IIASA into the possibility of can these players, these sectors, these ministries, these investing sectors actually play together? What kind of conditions we have to meet? So it's again methodologically interesting for IIASA, at the same time of a great importance for future governance of these very important issues of the future development.
Can these models ever be complete, though? There must be aspects that can also be put in and that are not put in because there just isn't the money or the resources to study them. I mean, human psychology, for example, must play a part in when it comes to game theory and population behavior.
I'm glad you say so. I mean, let's make one thing clear. I am not a protagonist of a all-encompassing integrated model, because that will be wrong. I think we are already making big progress when we actually can connect one or two or three sectors. We call it nexus. We used to speak about energy and water and climate and poverty separately. Now we talk about water, energy, nexus, energy, water, environment nexus. That's already three together. That's already a big step ahead. So I think that we should be doing this in a kind of stepwise approach. We should sort of not overrate ourselves in the ability to deal with such a complexity. Also, and to be completely frank with you, the mathematics behind this complexity, I mean, we became a little bit too much driven by the abilities which the ITC is giving to us. I mean, when I was a student, I still had to solve equations analytically, right? And I still have to go, with a computer, which took me 2 weeks to actually punch cards, and then to be very, very much concerned with what comes out of it, because it takes me to. Currently, I can solve any equations by numerical. I call it an era of the number crunching. I mean, we can crunch every number, every problem by big supercomputers, but it doesn't mean we understand what's happening there. So I am not very much friendly with these super models which will do everything at the same time. So partial approach, stepwise, is much, much more important. Now, coming back to your other question, which was about what else we need to understand to be able to do this cross-sectoral system analysis thinking. Yes, we need to turn much more to the human component, human agents in it. Cognitive sciences. As a matter of fact, last week I discussed with my leading scientists here, how could we put some of the focus of our future research on incorporating the human behavior, human attitudes, cognition, even the things like theological and aspects of beliefs and their religion. Now again, I'm saying this actually based on some of the recent results of IIASA research. For example, we have published last October, it was, major article about the way how we are understanding and investing into the efforts in the mitigation of the emissions of the greenhouse gases. And we identified that about 60-70% of the investments actually put on the wrong part of the chain, because the biggest gain is in the consumer behavior, in the efficiency up front of the whole chain, and we do almost nothing in the research to support that. We do a lot of research in the resources itself, in the technologies, but in the consumer behavior, psychology, if you want, we do almost nothing. So this is not only just a statement which I would like to make based on my own convincement, it's just based on the recent results of IIASA as well. So we will go to these fields carefully. It's not an easy field to do. We have a data from our population group at IIASA, which goes back to 35 years, to see if we could sort of get some of the cognitive sciences connected to our own approaches here. I was trained originally as a mathematician and then hydrologist, because mathematics needs applications. I was looking for links, and actually the whole career of mine, which goes back to 35 years, I mean, is based on connecting disciplines. And I knew, of course, in my career before, many of the IIASA colleagues and the IIASA's role in the international global change research and So to get here and to be able to lead this institute seems like a natural step in my career, also in my scientific focus. Again, the connectiveness between different elements of the system, Earth system, human systems, and try to understand the mechanism of it, but also the implications was always of the great interest to me. So it seems to be like a natural place. Of course, I feel very privileged to be here, but it seems to be a natural place on it. IIASA goes a little bit further beyond the state of the art of what we call integrative system thinking around the world. IIASA has capability and possibility to go beyond the state of the art by its nature of the academic think tank, which is not bound to any of the political boundaries, by its nature of actually having traditions to invite all disciplines which are needed to look into the problem from the system point of view. I mean, we have engineers, we have mathematicians, we have physicians, ecologists, we have economists, we have social scientists, what you need, basically. IIASA has the privilege of having huge, important databases to be able to test some of this feedback hypothesis. And IIASA is also well positioned in the world of science to policy interface. So in our case, the publications which are coming out very frequently in the high-level journals usually get picked up very quickly by policy discussions. Let it be UN circles, let it be governmental circles, let it be private circles. So I believe that IIASA is still fulfilling a very important role in the system type of underpinning of the global major decisions which we are making. Well, it's expanding in two ways. Since I came here, I mean, of course, this is a partly luck, partly a momentum. 2 more countries joined IIASA. It is Indonesia, the largest country in the Asian continent, Muslim country, which is important for us. Australia joined too, and as we speak, we are negotiating with up to 5 countries which may become member within a year or 2. Now, of course, this is not just a discussion about increasing numbers. IIASA will never become a UN type of organization, just collecting as many countries as we can. What we would like to do, we would like to have a balanced distribution of the expertise around the world, having the major academic contributions which actually we cannot miss on board, and also being represented geopolitically in a balance. IIASA has been established to do so, to do a top science to support geopolitical discussions. And I think that there is still a lot of geopolitical hotspots, if you like, which needs bridges to be built. So I actually believe that the original mission of IIASA, which was called Build Bridging Institute, is still there. And we started to focus on it. And the governments and member countries of IIASA Council support us in it. There are a couple of new initiatives which will start very soon, not discriminating, of course, the disciplinary approaches we still have, because you need a solid underpinning in disciplinary science. But we are going to look, for example, into the plausible futures of the Arctic. Arctic is a very interesting hotspot, physically, geopolitically too. The futures of the Arctic may actually determine very much the global stability, global economic situation. If everything will happen the way we expect, the energy resources will become available there, the nodes and the route will open up, there is a climate issue, environmental issue, there is a issue of the human damage in there, and there are many players on board. There are Arctic Council member countries, there are countries which are even not in the Arctic interested, and IIASA is well positioned to actually do a study about plausible future governance, having all the physical and societal and economical aspects, being party which has no direct interest. And this is where we are dialoguing with Arctic Council countries to do such a study. Other example is tropics. We have 3 major tropical countries on our council, which really we are very privileged to have: Brazil, Malaysia, Indonesia. Tropics and tropical forest is something which is harbored by this country. 90% of tropical forest is in these countries together. And we have no agreed upon sustainable path how these tropics should develop. And again, IIASA will be putting together a project called Plausible Futures of the Tropics, where we will combine the experiences into a system type of thinking globally to look at. We are actively involved in the studies looking to the future of the Russian Federation economic space, which of course is an important issue. I mean, would it be a future focused on a economic union within the border of the former Soviet Union? What implication does it have for energy, climate, whatever? Would it be a future collaboration between EU and Russian Federation? Would it be more Asian Pacific focused region? Those type of study IIASA is going to take on board. Risk portfolio. We are being asked by many of the countries, could you employ your knowledge about risk propagation and dealing with risk, vulnerability, in the context of the geophysical but also geopolitical risk. We are mounting carefully on a possibility to start scientific collaboration in the regions where the bridges really needs to be built. I talk about Iran, Israel, I talk about both Koreas. Just a few examples where IIASA approach has proved to be useful in 70s, could be and will be useful, I'm convinced, within coming 5 up to 10 years.
Interesting. So in the longer term, I mean in 50 years, for example, where will IIASA be then? What will it be doing? Any thoughts?
That's a good question.
Challenges?
That's a good question. I mean, 50 years, you know, it's really too long shot. I mean, frankly, I would be happy if I see IIASA doing these things in 30 years, but I mean, my own term is 3 plus 3, and we will see what happens then. But nevertheless, I'm a great believer in this combinatorics of system analysis, you know, across disciplines. I believe that the global sustainability agenda, the global economic development agenda, will go through a major transition within the next 10 years. We need to rethink completely our way how we do economy. I mean, we are still working with the economic model of 17th century. We need to rethink the concept of the GDP, the economic growth. I mean, look at the green growth discussion. I mean, it started very actively, and IIASA went together with many others to Rio Plus 20, and green growth concept, you know, became a concept which again was dividing the world between the environmental label and the economic growth label. That's not good. There is still a lot of work to be done. And again, green growth concept, isn't it system analysis concept? Isn't it concept of combining disciplines, talking about economic growth, which is based on non-classical type of resources? So I believe there is a huge arena for substantiation of such a discussion. IIASA will be probably playing a role in it. I didn't mention we have on the IIASA Council large portion of the G20 member countries, and we are talking to G20 member countries, some of them hosting G20 meetings this year, Russian Federation, next year Australia, to provide a major contribution from IIASA just to showcase what's possible when you really talk about cross-sectoral collaboration, when you put a different label on the future economic growth, when you are not afraid of talking about, for example, ecosystem services as being business, as being economy. So I believe that IIASA would become even more instrumental in these discussions globally. We are playing that role, but it could be even more visible. And so at least for next 20, maybe 30 years, I see a bright future for IIASA. Now, the Global Energy Assessment, as I mentioned, was a very important exercise, which was first of its kind, most comprehensive, cross-sectoral, looking into 3 sectors together and giving basically the plausible avenues, plausible passes to the future, including the cost. The next one of the similar approach will be Global Water Futures Project. You know, in water, I have been connected to the water world for many, many years as a science advisor of many governments, of my own. I've been member of the high-level committee in Netherlands, so advising Prime Minister about future of water infrastructure in Netherlands, etc., etc. And I believe that if I make a statement that we are making little progress in addressing the pressing issues regarding water is the right statement. What we missed in the past was comprehensive, multidisciplinary approach towards water futures. And this is exactly what this Global Water Future Project, which is coordinated by IIASA, together with major global partners, including United Nations Water Programme, including the World Water Council, International Water Association, and the Korean government, which is hosting World Water Forum in 2015. That project will try to use very new and unconventional methods and approaches towards global water futures. Um, this will be based on a more than one modeling tools, and it's very well known that many of the conclusions about futures of water resources used to be based on a one single model study, which of course doesn't account for uncertainties and for all the region which needs to be accounted for. But also, this is even more important, and we learned this lesson from the energy assessment, we will include the solution part of the equations from very beginning in the project. The solutions, of course, needs to be implemented, needs to be bought in, needs to be accepted. And I learned already in the career I've been through so far, but also from the other projects, that it doesn't work to sort of work 6 years or 5 years or 3 years on a major assessment with 5 books or less, and then put it on table and say, here it is, investors, here it is, governments, here it is, private sector, do something with it. So instead of that, we are going to employ a so-called co-creative principle, co-creation, to involve the major stakeholders, governments, investors, banks, private sector, in this project from very, very beginning. Because we hope that would not only increase the plausibility level of these scenarios, because they will make it themselves, it will also increase the rate of intake of the possible solutions. And I'm very pleased that the launch meeting, which took place at IIASA here in February, actually was very good example that this concept is going to be working, is going to be interesting for the parties. At the launching meeting here, we had a major water technologies, utility, Suez environment, but also banks, and they actually understood that this is a major opportunity for them as well. Let me give you one example. Salinity is one of the biggest issues imposing on us. We don't talk about it, but about 1 billion people in the major deltas of the world is suffering from too much too saline water during the dry season. I talk about salinity refugees already in Bangladesh, for example. Now, we have no solution at that scale. We have a solution which is called technology solution, which is so-called membrane technology to desalinate water. And that's available, and it's being used for recreational purposes in big hotels around the world. But it gives me water, 1 cubic meter water, for 1.5 euro. That's okay for me when I go for holiday because I can pay for it. It's not okay for 1 billion farmers in India or in Vietnam who need it in 20 years' time. So I am telling to my private stakeholders in my project, if you give me your plausible guess on when in time your technology will become 10 times cheaper, I give you a global market which are 100 times bigger than you have now. And this is exactly the dialogue we are having together. So this buy-in from very beginning is working. I am a great believer that this approach is a new approach where actually we will make a difference. The capacity building has been one of the success stories of IIASA. In 75, if I have the year right, we started with something which is called Young Scientist Summer Program, which basically is a formula where about 50, close to 50, more than 50, young scientists collected IIASA every summer for 3 months, selected from many more applications, coming from the member countries of IIASA Council, but sometimes it was also from outside of those. Spending here 3 months, not in the mode of listening to lectures, but actually being hands-on, collaborating in a heavy day-to-day, night-to-night mode with our researchers. And such as they ends up with a paper, and the most successful of them come back as a postdocs. Now, in this way, we have developed close to 2,000 alumni around the world who are having a major academic positions. Some of them are Nobel Prize winners, some of them are working with Nobel Prize winners, some of them are high up in the governments and in private sector of R&D segment of it. Now, that model has been so successful that at present we are discussing expansion of it with at least 3 regions, I call it regions or countries on the IIASA Council. We have just finalized an experiment, first edition of a young scientist summer program together with South African NMO, which is the organization in South Africa. Same model, actually even more interesting model because the supervision was jointly done by the IIASA scientists and the South African scientists. 20 students from all over the world spent 3 months in South Africa doing the same as they would at IIASA, studying their subject cross-disciplinary publishing paper. I'm traveling to China within next month to discuss with Tsinghua University and with the Chinese NMO their interest to do the same for the Asian region, and I will be in Brazil in October to discuss with the Brazilian colleagues same model in South America. So my vision expectation is that within 3 up to 4 years we will have every year at least 2 this very visible young scientist program. One at IIASA, because that will simply be happening every summer, people expect that. And then, one year in South Africa, 1 year in China, 1 year in Brazil, and we go around. So at least 2 a year. And there is a big momentum for such an approach. Yeah.
So just another question on the YSSP. How do you choose the people who come on the courses?
Well, first there is a call, and the applications are coming in. I mean, the applications are, for example, this year we had 700 applications for 50 places, which is quite a big response. And then it goes through a very important scrutiny. We go through a matching between the program interest, because I have to have a scientist to be able to spend a lot of time on it. Then we go through an external committee, which is looking into the advice of their quality. Then we go back to the NMOs, because they have to fund them. So the NMOs are actually, the countries are funding them on top of their contributions. So it's a kind of iterative process, which in the end ends up with the cohort of 55 young scientists on it. But it's a competitive selection process based on the applications. They are not only just sending CV, but also a description of their project, of their insight into how to carry on this possible project. And so it's an iterative process between the interest from the applicant, interest of my program here, of my program leaders, of my scientists here, to come up to the optimum guidance, optimum collaboration.
Do they tend to be dominated by certain countries?
Actually, they are not. This is another interesting phenomenon. Of course, there is a variation between years. But if you look back, and if you would sort of use the filter called the current composition of IIASA Council, 20 countries, except for the newcomers, Australia, Indonesia, I think we have had quite a well-distributed representation of the countries in our ISSP. There is a strong cohort historically every year from United States, from China as well, also India, but also the European countries, Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, for example, is this year, I think, proposing 4 or 5, which made it. So it's well distributed. Then. Now, if I may give you yet another example of IIASA capacity building, the Young Scientist program is a program which is aimed at the very young scientists in their PhD years, so not yet finalized doctorate. We also have a postdoc program which IIASA doubled and actually tripled since I came here. So we are having a very prestigious postdoc positions, 6 a year, open up for everybody. I must say, and I would like to say it very explicitly and with a word of thanks, the member countries of IIASA Council do not limit me in choosing my employees, my researchers. I have researchers on staff from 52 countries, so I can really go around to collect the best. There is also no limit at IIASA on age. My youngest researchers are just above 20, gifted researchers from Japan, Korea, elsewhere, and the oldest mathematicians are 84, 86, and they work together. So really stimulating environment to be. But coming back to the postdoc program, so postdocs are coming here, they are free to do their things, they are free to sort of spend here 2 years actually to publish papers with best IIASA researchers. We are going to introduce something very new. I'm talking to the agencies around the world and talking to my NMO member countries about a construct which I call International Graduate School of Excellence, which will be a construct based on a senior level postdocs, those who finish PhD and work at least 5 years in their fields. We will have a system where every IIASA member country would nominate 3 leading universities. For example, in US it will be Princeton, Harvard, and UCLA, which will be becoming part of a network of a project having 50 postdocs on board for 5 years, which will be formulated as a project of integrated studies. These postdocs will be coming from all the fields, mathematics and social sciences, everything in between. They will be facilitated to move horizontally, as I call it, so between countries, but every year 4 months at IIASA together, to do the work together, to be guided by best researchers, both inside and outside, and publish together for 5 years sustained. And that model has never been done before. Young generation actually to be put together for 5 years to think about system approach in the global transitions. And I expect quite a number of new results from it, but also a lot of impact in the thinking about how the type of system analysis could be done actually could penetrate better the major agencies, universities, education system, and finally supporting the policy processes.
Fantastic, very exciting future then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.